All right, we are building a bass line. This is your host, Nate Shaw. Today's lesson is on approach tones. Approaching from a half step below our target note or approaching from a half step above our target note. In classical terms, we might call that a neighbor tone, but I'm going to call it an approach tone today. So, example might be if I was playing a C blues, might sound a little bit something like this. All right, so I'm approaching my target notes from a half step below. In this case, we're playing in the key of C. So I'm approaching from a B, or I'm approaching from a half step above. Okay, so step one is being able to approach from a half step below, and we're thinking about our target notes. So in this case, the example is going to be moving from a 1 chord of our blues up to the 4 chord of our blues, which would of course be an F and C. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how we find the 4 chord. So we're going to approach from a half step below the 4 chord, the root of the 4 chord. Right? So E, F. Check it out in action. Here's the 1. Still on the 1 chord, I'm getting ready to go to the 4 chord. That was the approach. Approach from a half step below. Now, if I put it in the context of an entire blues form, so we're now going to approach the 4 chord from a half step below, and the 5 chord from a half step below. Check out what that sounds like. Here we go. Heading to the 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord. Here's the 5 chord. There we go, and that's the full blues form approaching only from a half step below. Now let's take a look at approaching from a half step above. And in this case, it's always going to be, chromatic. In other words, we're not playing a scale tone. We're playing a half step above, so we're leaving the scale. C. Or to get to the 4 chord, a half step above the root there. Or to get to the 5 chord, a half step would be, right? The 5 chord's a G, so a half step above that would be G sharp or A flat. Let's hear that in context. Here we go. Okay, get ready to go to the 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord. To the 5 chord. 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord. And to the 5 chord. And home. You dig? Okay, now the final step for you is going to be to combine the two. Moving from a half step below, approaching your target note a half step below, or from a half step above. Let's combine them and see how groovy and how really super funky and advanced a bass line can sound just using this simple rule of moving or approaching your target note from a half step below or above. Check it out. I'm going to combine it. I'm going to combine below and above. So, simple rule. Approach your target note from a half step below or above and create really sweet swinging sounding bass lines.